13-10 was your final score. Ohio State came into this game about a 3.5, 4.5 point favorite, depending where you look. They were still, I think, the choice by many folks who look at this game. And when you were, I guess, forced to make a decision, we all said Ohio State, Dan. Everybody thought Indiana was good.
I did. You did. But yes.
We all thought Indiana was good, but this is Ohio State we were talking about here.
Yeah.
Indiana won this game. This was a defensive battle. Really, the story of the day for me across the board was how 4 defenses fared. I guess in this case, we had 2. 13-10 was well under whatever under it was. I think it was like 45.5 points. And I think we learned a lot about the Indiana Hoosiers in this one, Dan.
Yeah, we absolutely did. Well, we did and we didn't, right? This is who Indiana has been this season. They've had a couple close calls, namely against Iowa, Oregon, and Penn State. They are able to come through in those close calls. The thing that those 3 teams had in common was defense, and Ohio State certainly has that defense. But I don't know how you come away from that game thinking anything but Indiana is just excellent. Like, we saw this Indiana, not this Indiana team, but we saw Indiana last year against Ohio State. We didn't know what to believe with their schedule. Obviously, Indiana more tested this season. But for them to come through, for them to force that much discomfort from Julian Sayin, from this offense, and Ohio State fans are quick to look at Brian Hartline and the play calling, and I'm sure there is, justifiable criticisms here. But you got to win between the hashes. Like, you got to win. And I watch Indiana. They won more one-on-one battles. They didn't back down from any of these dudes on either side of the ball. Fernando Mendoza with a couple of just monstrous, like Pedro Serrano marbles throws.
Yeah.
Just absolutely. I think were they both to Charlie Becker? I want to say they were both to Charlie Becker.
Charlie B from Nashville, Tennessee, as Gus Johnson called him. Yeah, he had a monster game.
Omar Cooper on the sideline, hurt early on after he comes up a little bit gnarly after a long pass attempt. Look, the headline here for me is Indiana was better at moments. Indiana was better at the big picture, and Indiana was better at chaos. And at least for a night in Indianapolis, it was enough. It was just crazy impressive.
Joel Klatt brought up something very interesting on the broadcast, and we talked about this in the run-up to the game. Indiana was the most zone-heavy defense in all of college football.
Mm-hmm.
And at least in theory, coming into this one, you and I discussed how it makes sense to do that against Ohio State. You can't man these guys up. You're not going to man up Jeremiah Smith. Indiana tried a couple times, didn't really work out that well.
Right.
Hasn't worked out well for literally everybody who has tried it. And
even when it worked out, he made plays.
Even when it works out, he makes plays. And if it's not him, it's Carnell Tate. If it's not him, it's Max Clare. It's Brandon Innes. I mean, they just keep coming at you with their pass catchers. And so Indiana, just by the nature of how they like to play defense, they were, I'm not going to say at an advantage, but that is the preferred way to play a receiver room that is this good and presents such a matchup disadvantage. But what Joel Klatt brought up on the broadcast was something that he was seeing throughout the course of this game. Indiana playing 2 safeties deep, almost extra deep, to prevent against anything over the top. Mm-hmm. Indiana dropping their linebackers a little bit deeper, maybe than you might expect. Forcing Julian Sayin to take a lot of underneath stuff. And I think you saw that a little bit more later on in the game. I mean, they had some big gainers. Jeremiah Smith had a nice 52-yarder in this game. I think all of their receivers probably had a 20-yard gain here or there. Certainly Max Clare and Carnell Tate were in that class. But by forcing them to take a lot of the underneath stuff, it sort of defanged the offense a little bit. Mm-hmm. And Bo Jackson had a nice day on the ground, and I think in the end, Julian Sayin finished with over 250 yards passing, and still push came to shove, you would take the type of day that Julian Sayin had. But Indiana was able to play enough smart defense against this passing offense to prevent themselves from being absolutely gashed. And they held them to 10 points. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. So I was damn impressed with this Indiana defense and their game plan coming into this one. We had some questions about the Ohio State offense. I think we still feel generally pretty good about what they have. They've got an accurate passer and
what they have.
A developing running back, obviously an incredible cast of characters out wide that can kill you in 1,000 different directions. But the way that Indiana game planned here, it was very apparent that they were out for blood and that they wanted to try and win this one. And as you brought up on the stream that we did, the very long 4-hour stream,
Mhm.
if you had told an Indiana fan 15 years ago that they would win the Big Ten, that fan would ask you, who was the starting 5?
Exactly. Yeah. No, look, let's be as clear as we can be. Ohio State had opportunities to win this game. There was a missed field goal and a sneak that came up short, both in the red zone. And
Yeah.
both of these quarterbacks threw interceptions. There were opportunities in each way. In each way, there were explosion plays in each way. But it was especially coming out in that second half when Ohio State had the ball that Indiana's pass rush stepped up. They have the long pass. They turn it into points. And to me, the story is still the Indiana defense and
Same.
how good they were on third downs for the
Absolutely.
first, like, 2/3 of this game. Like, they just kept Ohio State away from rhythm. And if you watch, the second half of that Michigan game when Ohio State just sat on the ball when they were just like, let's just turn 6 yards, 11 yards, 4 yards, 15 yards, right? That they sat on the ball for as long as they did. They got into a rhythm. There was no such rhythm to this Ohio State offense, and that's in large part due to the Indiana defense, what they were up front. And I know there are complaints about calls, non-calls, whatever, but
they didn't
this was a
call it
game
either way.
They didn't seem to
Along the
call a
line.
lot either way.
No.
And you can't say Ohio State didn't have opportunities because they absolutely did. Indiana just converted more of their own. And so a crazy story. We joked about, talking about the Indiana-Illinois game, deciding who would come in fourth place between like Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and then who.
Yeah.
Indiana's your Big Ten champ. And they went through Oregon and Indiana, and Ohio State and Penn State to do so. Just monsters.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I would bring up a few other points. You mentioned third down on the Ohio State side of what Indiana's defense did, but there was a big chunk of this game, and we talked about this too as we were watching it, that Indiana seemed very content to get to third and manageable. It wasn't about trying to take the lid off of the defense on first or second down, but they were just very efficient for a good chunk of this game at getting to third and short and converting. They finished 6 of 13 on third downs. That's pretty good. You'll take that against Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of why they had success in this one. And obviously Fernando Mendoza came up big again when he had to. I mean, I don't know if he won the Heisman with this performance, but he certainly didn't lose his invite to New York with this performance.
Right.
He should be there. He should be one of the finalists. Absolutely. And this is another clutch performance by him. We saw it on the road against Penn State. We saw it again here today against Ohio State, coming through in a really, really big way, making some key throws at big moments and just being really solid with the football. Did have the pick, but really, really solid across the board, not doing anything to make his team have to play from behind, in a key moment. The other thing that I would add here, and I think this is very, very important, especially now as we go into the playoff. You know this as well as I. Everybody who is listening to this knows how this works this time of year. The conversation is about strength of schedule. The conversation is about resume. Who did you beat? The conversation often is this team a fluke?
Right.
I don't think you watch this game with Indiana winning 13-10 and in good faith could say that this was a fluke.
Right.
This was not a fluke win. This was a hard-fought win, and it was a defensive struggle. And for sure, it could have gone the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But even Ohio State fans can't look at this loss and say they got lucky. They were just damn good.
Yeah.
And so now as we go into the playoff, they are going to be the number 1 overall seed, which is still crazy to say aloud, but it's true.
Yep.
And it's undisputed. They're the only undefeated team in FBS college football. I got to raise my glass to Curt Cignetti, to Fernando Mendoza, to the roster that he built, which was better this year than it was a year ago. This team stood on the shoulders of what Cignetti did in year 1. And it's crazy, but they are the Big Ten friggin' champions with the 13-10 win in Indianapolis over Ohio State.
This is true. They left no doubt.
What would you do if you were the committee with respect to Ohio State? I think we'd agree that Indiana is going to be 1 overall. But does Ohio State drop at all? They were previously 1. Do you drop them to 2? Do you drop them to 3? This is obviously a very, very close win. I could tell you my inclination is to just switch places, 1 and 2 still. But do you have a differing opinion?
I think I'm fine with Ohio State at 2. No, certainly no lower than 3, but I think I'd be fine with them at 2. Yeah. I mean, you go 12-0 during the regular season in a major conference, have a headline non-conference win like Ohio State does over Texas in week 1. You beat Michigan in the manner in which they beat Michigan. They lose the conference championship game by a field goal. Yeah, I think 2 is fine by me.